A very good morning to all of you. Thanks for being here. Welcome to the first session of the day, which we are conducting on global solar stock take, solar energy meeting the ambition of tripling renewable energy by 2030. This is an important year for all of us, considering the fact that this is the year when Europe Triple C is also doing the global stock take of the climate change commitments, the NDCs. It's an important year from the perspective of the G20 meeting, which also recently concluded, which talked about tripling of renewable energy by 2030. Both in NDC and in G20, there is one common element, which is renewable energy. And within renewable energy, we all know that solar energy is one of the critical source through which the countries can achieve the NDCs and countries can achieve the tripling of renewable energy target as well. We at ISA, when we were tracking the global stock take of climate change since the beginning of this year, we were also tracking the report which came out. It was important for us to also take stock of the solar energy, which is a critical component for both NDCs and for both the G20 commitments. So we did a detailed study in past 4 5 months. We came up with a report as well, which we are also going to launch during this event. The report talks about the status of the solar energy regionally as well as at the country level, how it's featured in the NDCs of the countries, what the countries have achieved, and whether it's going in the right track to achieve the country NDCs as well as the G20 commitments. So we'll also be talking about that report. We have a short presentation for that. Now I would like to invite my colleague, Ms. Sandeep Singh, for the opening remarks. Sandeep, over to you.
Thank you, Sabhar, and a very good morning to you all. Um, I and we, on behalf of the ISA and our Director General, Dr. Mathur, and the Chief Operating Officer, Joshua Wycliffe, would like to welcome you to this very important session on Solar Ambition 2030. What insights does the global stock take have? Uh, Joshua Wycliffe couldn't be here with us today, so I will be delivering the opening welcoming remarks on his behalf. I'd like to acknowledge all our panelists who are here and like to thank them for taking their time out to be here with us for this very important side event. The panelists for today are Dr. Roca, Head of Solar PV Research, University of Havana, Cuba, um, Mr. Abraham, Head of Solar Technologies, Ministry of Energy and Water Resources, Government of Somalia, Mr. Chaturvedi, Head of Action for Climate and Environment, UNDP India, Ms. Yuvela, Principal Program Coordinator, AFDB and Africa NDC Hub, Mr. Scuffer, Deputy Head of Division for Energy, Urban Development, Mobility and Infrastructure at the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and Mr. Tae Wang. I hope I got your name right, Mr. Tae Wang, Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, Government of Bhutan. As you have heard from my colleague here, Sabha, solar energy plays a significant role in helping countries achieve their NDCs and their NDC targets, particularly in the context of Paris Agreement. Energy transition or transitioning from fossil fuels to solar power can significantly reduce countries' carbon footprint, helping countries achieve emission reduction targets outlined in the NDCs under the Paris Agreement. Most of the countries have included targets for increasing the share of renewable energy in their overall energy mix in their NDCs. Solar energy, with its rapid growth and falling cost, is a key contributor in meeting some of these targets. Solar energy capacity has been growing rapidly worldwide. Many countries have been investing heavily in solar infrastructure, including both in photovoltaic and concentrated power, solar power technologies. Solar power is also increasingly becoming the least cost option for the power sector in many of the seats and the LDCs. Conducting a solar energy stocktake is important for progress on NDCs related to climate change. A solar energy stocktake involves assessing the current state of solar energy deployment, including installed capacity, technological advancements, policy frameworks, and the overall contribution of solar energy in a country's energy mix. Conducting stock take helps identify barriers and challenges that may be hindering the widespread adoption of the solar energy. These obstacles could include regulatory processes, financing challenges, or technological gaps. Understanding some of these barriers are essential for developing effective strategies to overcome them. And these are some of the things that we will be talking about today and will be part of the stock take report that will be launched. The information gathered from the solar energy stocktake can inform formulation or adjustment of policies related to renewable energy. And it provides, of course, insights on the effectiveness of some of the existing policies and help policymakers tailor make some of the interventions to address specific needs and gaps in the solar energy sector. Solar energy stocktake provides a basis of international cooperation by allowing countries to share information, experiences, and best practices, fostering collaboration on technological advancements and capacity building. Of course, regular step takes are important because it helps raise awareness among public and other stakeholders, including the private sector, about the progress in their solar energy deployment, and transparent reporting on achievements and challenges fosters engagement and support renewable initiatives. So, as part of this global efforts, parties to the UNFCCC are taking or making efforts to ensure that there is implementation at country level, and the implementation and their efforts are aligned to the UNFCCC goals and commitments. So, ladies and gentlemen, I won't be taking much of your time because we have got a very experienced panelists and experts in the room you'll be hearing from. But on behalf of the DG and their Chief Operating Officer who are going to be here, like I said earlier, and the entire ISA team would like to welcome you to this session, and we look forward to hearing from you all. And we hope that we can continue to work together and collaborate on this very important subject matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandeep. Uh, like UNFCCC has institutionalized the process of the global stock take, we also want to institutionalize the process of the global solar stock take. Because unless you measure the reach of the solar energy and the capacity of the solar energy, it's very difficult to say whether countries have achieved their NDCs or not. So in 2 years time, in 5 years time, in 10 years time, we want to feed into the process of the global stock solar stock take, sorry, global stock take, with the process that we have started on the solar stock take. We have a short presentation on the report, what we have done. We would like to take your views during the panel discussion as well on whether we are going on the right track, what we need to do more to efficiently institutionalize the entire process of the stock take. I would like to invite my colleague Rishikesh Muthil from KPMG to deliver the presentation on the report.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sabha, and thank you, Sandeep, for the brief introduction of background of the report and setting the context for today. So, like Sabha mentioned, we initially thought of coming out with a global only specific to solar stock take to understand where different countries stand in terms of their NDC commitments. But later we decided to align with various global agenda as well, including G20 commitments and also tripling RE capacity, one of the key outcome of COP28 also. So I'll quickly introduce about the background of the report. So what elements we are trying to capture through this report. The one is to understand the review of NDC commitments by different countries, and second to understand where the solar stand in terms of their commitments. Okay, and three also to identify the barriers and challenges across pertaining to these commitments, and then come out with possible recommendations which can accelerate solar adoption across various countries. This is a overview of the report. There are five key sections. Like I mentioned, we start with NDCs and net zeros because these are closely aligned with the commitments and RE installations. And second, we're doing a deep dive of global review of these commitments. And then for this particular area, we want to focus on the region level. Going forward, we will deep dive into the country specific to understand broader aspects. And then we identified the key barriers and drivers, followed by recommendations. Yeah, so like the G20 agenda, which is clear now, tripling RE by 2030, because G20 represent almost more than 60% of the solar capacity globally. So they play a key role in terms of meeting climate goals. Uh, and second, among the different RE capacities, what we analyzed is solar has taken more than 70% share in terms of installations, what you have seen in 2022, and going forward this will continue and this will be the dominant technology to meet climate goals. This slide talks about how different regions are progressing in terms of solar additions. So there is a lot of disparity among the different regions. And if you look at, we analyzed Americas, APAC, excluding China, because China is taking the major chunk in terms of installations, then Europe and Middle East and Africa. So in 2022, around 226 gigawatt of solar installations have happened globally, out of which the top five countries, what I can say is China, US, Brazil, Spain, which have almost had 66% of the installations globally. So they are the emerging or they are the leaders in 2022 in terms of solar capacity additions. So this slide talks about the regional disparity. What I was saying in terms of installations, APAC occupies the major chunk, followed by Europe, Americas, and Middle East and Africa. So definitely there is too much of space to grow in Middle East and Africa in terms of installations. Whereas in Europe, you have seen countries coming out like Spain and Netherlands in the last 3-4 years. They have seen a CAGR of more than 25% in terms of solar additions. So the point what we are trying to analyze through the report is we want to stock take where different countries are stand as on today, and also to understand what capacity requirements are needed to meet this climate goals from the solar point of view. So what we have done is like we have assessed various studies and various methodologies to understand what capacities are required until 2030 from solar, and going forward until 2050 how much capacity needs to be driven by solar. So clearly one thing is coming out around the current installations are not a pace to meet the climate goals from the solar as well. So we need around 600 gigawatts at least annually until 2030, and post 2030 the installations would cross 1 terawatt per annum to meet climate goals. In and this slide talks about the EU and Americas. Basically, we want to focus from the data which we analyzed from 2017, because post 2017, most of the countries the growth patterns are different. You see CAGR more than 25%, and in some countries it's crossing more than 80% as well. So in very specific to Europe, Spain, Netherlands have been the leaders in 2022, and they have saw more than 3 gigawatt installations in 2022. And in in Americas, USA, Brazil, and Mexico, these are the key leaders, and they have seen a growth of more than 60% in their regions. So one aspect which is clearly coming out is the focus is not just on the ground-mounted installations. Now the focus is moving towards more towards rooftop and also agri-related aspects in solar. And people are also focusing on solar coupling, because solar, being the cheaper form of electricity, it's contributing to other forms of hard to abate decarbonization sectors, so green hydrogen. So these are some of the key drivers which are putting solar in the as a leader in overall RE. And the other aspect is, okay, from the installations point of view, there is a need for more installation needs to happen. But how about the investments pertaining to push this solar to the target? So we analyze. So basically, as on today in 2022, the investments in specific to solar have attracted 300 billion USD. Uh, I mean, to meet the targets of climate goals from the solar, the investments has to ramp up to more than 500 billion until 2030 per year. Post 2030, the cumulative investments needs to go at least to 10 trillion US dollars. Other aspect which needs to be done parallelly is the solar PV manufacturing. We understand the most of the manufacturing facilities are concentrated in China, so there is a need for diversification, and the manufacturing capacity needs to ramp up to 1 terawatt at least by 2030. So I've summarized, in the interest of time, the challenges and drivers to the key bullets. The first thing is the social acceptance. Avoiding NIMBYism is not in my backyard thing. And then fossil fuel subsidies. The data shows in 2022 alone, the subsidies and investments into fossil fuel have crossed 1 trillion USD specific to power sector. So this is huge. And labor availability, to meet the 2030 agenda, we need at least 10 million solar jobs. Okay, so there is a need for enhancing and attracting workers towards solar. Permitting, but this is one of the crucial aspect we saw across the various regions. Uh, Administrative burdens are increasing in terms of getting grid approvals to commissioning and grid constraints. And in the report, we have identified the countries which have more penetration in terms of solar, and and highlighted what needs to be done to meet this, or to avoid curtailment, and also include energy storage technologies. Like I mentioned, solar PV manufacturing concentration, which needs to be overcome. Yeah, so this is the crux of the report in terms of recommendations, what we want to highlight. So, like I mentioned, to meet the 2030 agenda of global RE, the solar installations needs to enhance to more than 600 gigawatt per annum until 2030, and then by 1 terawatt post 2030 to 2050 to meet the climate goals. To achieve that, there are certain elements we need to focus upon, starting with the policy push. We have seen these policy measures, including FIT, tax incentives, rebates, have been worked in some of the countries. So the best practices can be adopted in the regions which are lagging. And second, invest in grid infrastructure. So this has to happen parallelly, not just on the installation. So the grid needs to be also enhanced to meet the increasing capacity additions. Domestic manufacturing, which also is a key aspect, and permitting and approval process, and technology transfer, and knowledge sharing thing, uh, and also align solar with the carbon neutrality commitments to prioritize investments. And the second aspect is on the investments. So, ISA also launched 3 reports on technology, markets, and investments during the ISA assembly. So, in that report, we have clearly identified what are the elements in being instrumental in attracting more investments in solar. So, the key things are the green bonds, which we see is a growing pattern in terms of raising more money from the markets, and dedicated climate funds, and the blended finance. I think this topic has been discussed across various forums also, and ISA is also trying to push this through different. Uh, then the other aspect is the commercial financial institutions. What we see needs to play a key role, and the FDIs is one of the other aspect which we also touched upon in the report. So basically, what we're trying to say is like the current level of investments needs to be enhanced to meet the climate goals, and there are multiple instruments and business models which needs to be innovated and implemented across different regions. Yes, and within solar, definitely there is a room for more efficiency improvements. What we see currently, the efficiencies are around 23%, and the power ratings are around 600 watts in terms of module capacities. But going forward, this might go up to 1000 watts, and also efficiency around 28%. So, okay, so there is a room for improvement, and technology like TopCon, heterojunction, and IBC will play a key role going forward in the 3 to 4 years. And CSP, one interesting aspect we have seen in many countries is CSP is coming into picture because of the repurposing of coal plants. People are, reusing the coal plants to implement CSP technologies, and this mode of the scheme of things will be coming in the future to see more intention to adopt CSP technology as well. And other aspects, the jobs, yes, green jobs is which is important. Like I mentioned, the estimations are around 10 million jobs would be required to meet the tripling agenda. So there are various initiatives which have been already started by ISA, okay, including star centers, Solar X Challenge, and also knowledge sharing platforms. What ISA is already has. So these are some of the key recommendations I've summarized as a part of the report, not taking much of your time. So our report captures all these aspects in detail. You can have a look post the launch today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rishikesh. I mean, you have seen. We all know that we are not on track in terms of the NDC commitments through the negotiations which are going on right now. But we can also see through the numbers that we are not on track on one of the major components of the emission reduction, which is renewable energy, particularly solar energy. So, and this report is going to be very helpful for people who talk about renewable energy targets in NDCs, because most of the country NDCs have renewable energy commitments, not if there are not targets. With us, we have Srinivas. Srinivas is has been seeing negotiation from past, I don't know, 15, 20 years. He has seen the negotiations very closely, and now he's working on renewable energy. His organization, Vasudha Foundation, has done really good job in creating dashboards on live renewable energy information and data. So over to you, Srinivas. Please.
Thank you, Sabah, and a very good morning to all of you. Since we've been talking of NDC tracking and we're talking of numbers, uh, what best would it be if you have data at your fingertips, and data from across the globe, data which is not hidden behind paywalls, data that one should not pay for or wouldn't need to pay for, data that one does not need to go through multiple dashboards and multiple reports and multiple PDF documents and multiple scanned documents. Um, as they say, there's a very famous adage that says charity begins at home. And being a homegrown India organization, we thought, let's start off with India and create a comprehensive dashboard that provides data for the entire energy value chain. Along with it, marrying elements of uh, key economic indicators and demographic indicators, marrying elements of climate and environment to it, and provide a dashboard that is not only granular, but provides both historic and near real-time data. So as we speak, the data is updated till about the 5th or the 6th of December, and there is a time lag of about 3 or 4 days. That is also going forward. We will try to keep that to near or real time from a near real time data that is granular. When I say granular, it just does not cover the national level data, but also covers data from all the states, districts, wherever it is, wherever data is applicable and appropriate and required, and data from the electricity utilities, which again is very difficult to find in one comprehensive dashboard. So with that as a starting point, and I would like to acknowledge the support of organizations like the Children Investment Fund Foundation, the SED Fund, and the Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation for supporting this initiative. Going forward, what we intend doing, and that's the reason why I requested Sabah and whether we could do it, is in partnership with the International Solar Alliance. We're also looking at replicating this across various other countries, particularly starting out with Africa, where access to data is a little could be a challenge, and also cover South Asia, We'll start over the neighbors and go beyond to other continents and countries is the idea. So so with that, what the dashboard has is it starts off with a with having a NDC tracker, which again is near real time. It's been updated. We updated every 2 days, every Tuesday and Thursday is when it updates for those who are interested in details. So you do have the details, and each and each of the NDC targets for India can be tracked and quantified on a near real time basis. Now, I did talk about that. This platform, I should say, is in partnership with Niti Aayog. For those of you who do not know what Niti Aayog is or who Niti Aayog is, Niti Aayog is a government think tank, which is erstwhile Planning Commission, and this is done in partnership with Niti Aayog. In fact, this dashboard is housed on a government web server, which is called the NIC server, the National Informative Information, whatever it's called. It's housed in a NIC server, and it has all the what's it security tags that is linked to a government server. So and importantly, and I should tell you this, you can download the data in any form you want, from Excels to PDFs to JPEG images and so on. It's a very interactive site as well. Um, and this has data from close to about 100 plus different dashboards and 100 different reports and 100 different PDF documents and so on, from the Ministry of Power to the Ministry of Petroleum, Natural Gas, to the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, and of course the Central Electricity Authority, the Power System Operation Company, the what's called as a POSICO, and a whole lot of state discoms, and of course tariff orders, which itself amounts to go close to about 600 odd tariff orders across a period of 5 years. The data that is housed here for some data sets, and then of course the IMD, the Meteorological Department, of course, and the data ranges from 2015 to 20 till date, and then in some cases, like for example, the IMD data goes back to 1900. So we do have data that's also very historic, just to provide that kind of a perspective for those who are interested in. So it's a family tariff orders, weather monitoring stations, and so on and so forth. Importantly, for who can use this? I think Seba was talking of it. I would just stick to the point of creating reliable monitoring and verification protocols, tracking on a regular basis, protocols for risk mitigation, and I would say empowering and supporting communities with information and analysis. And of course, NDC and net zero tracking. The whole purpose of this dashboard actually was to develop the net zero pathways for India. And we also use this dashboard to develop net zero pathways at the subnational level. So Vasudha Foundation is also working at states like Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and so on. For those of you familiar with the Indian geography, to develop net zero pathways for these states, and net zero visioning and net zero pathways for a number of states. I did talk of that, but then let me show you some sort of a sense of what is the kind of data that it has. So you start off with the electricity sector, you can get a very detailed information of where we are, what are the kind of RE capacity growth, not just year on year, both cumulative. You could also look at year on year addition. You look at where we are, where we stand, and so on. It also gives you a historical perspective of the kind of electricity mix and the change of electricity mix. So one can actually look at that entire trend. One can actually look at daily trends too, which I'll show you in the next one. So you also have your India peak demand trends. We also have hourly load curves, so you can actually mix and match, your supply with the demand. So, for example, there are states like, and we deliberately chose a few of these states like Karnataka. There are days in Karnataka, in the state of Karnataka, which is in southern part of India, where the entire electricity supply is from renewables alone. Because of the day demand being very high. And then you also have the hydro kicking in, you have the hydro solar wind kicking in, a state that has got all three in a fairly large capacities. So, and then if you look at the demand projection, so you also look at the demand projection. Now, this data is very difficult to find because this comes from the various electricity distribution utilities, but you can also look at the kind of consumer groups across states. What is their consumption patterns? What are the hourly consumption patterns? right? So that would also help you to plan what are the kind of solar additions that is required. So if I have to do, let's say, we all know that 12 to 3 is the peak for solar generation. So is 12 to 3 and this is your electricity generation, this is how you can plan. So that kind of analysis, that kind of a planning is also possible with this tool. And a lot of states have actually started doing it, using this tool extensively. They do have the data. It's not that they don't have the data. Putting it in this kind of format helps them to access it and process it easily so that they can it's easy for their planning process. um, so and then you can also look at the energy transition. So where does states stand? You can do a comparison of between different states. You can look at potential versus the actual installation. So that also makes you plan, saying, okay, the next 3 years, 5 years, this is what I can do. To this, we are also going to add another element to it, which is also identifying on land areas, factoring in social and environmental values. Because if you're looking at solar in a big way, land footprint is, solar requires huge amount of land. So how do you identify land parcels without, encroaching into environmental and social values? So that's also going to be embedded into this tool. So this is again, we just a few states. This is again, if you can go to the distribution utility side, you can actually go into a utility, you can find what your portfolio of electricity purchase year on year is, you know where they're buying the electricity from, you know which power plant they're buying the electricity from. If you actually go in detail, you can actually look at how much are they, paying for it, what cost for each of the source of electricity, and then you can also say what's the quantum that they are purchasing. This is your petroleum consumption pattern. Again, we also track where is the petrol being purchased from or where the petroleum products purchased from, what are the changes in trends, what is the cost, and how it's an impact on consumers. She could look at that trend as well. And then it also has, like I said, electric vehicle penetration. You can look at that. You can look at what are the categories of vehicle penetration. So again, linking all of that to your energy supply and demand. So it does not just look at supply side. So generally, most dashboards across the globe focus on the supply side. That's very easy to get. But getting the demand side, there are very few dashboards that have it, and this is one of the unique dashboards that have that. And then, like I said, we also have your social economic indicators, and we just showed two states as a comparison. And then you have the climate variability. Like I said, we have data from about 1900 from the 800 odd weather stations. So you can actually look at daily weather changes, patterns, summer, winter, its impact on electricity demand, etc. So all that can be. We have a very interesting section called the analytics section where you can actually mix and match various parameters to get that kind. So if I click on a question on a daily temperature rise or changes in climate and electricity demand, you could get that picture. So this is your crude oil price. I actually wanted to demonstrate the site. Then, given that internet here is very patchy, and I thought I would just do a quick presentation. But this is a site, icd.niti.gov.in. In case those of you are interested in, at some point in time, we would be happy, our team would be happy to give you a demonstration of the site. There is, the demonstration of the site would take at least an hour. It's not going to be an easy, it's not going to be, it can't be done in a jiffy. So I thought it's best to take some elements in a PowerPoint slide, and here it is for you. Happy to answer any questions, but this is a link to the site, and we would be happy to welcome as many visitors to the site as possible. There's nothing to stop you from entering that. Thank you very much.
But thank you, Srinivas. I mean, it's a very good website in terms of it goes with the saying. I mean, you can't manage if you don't measure. So this is a very good website in terms of measuring. It's a start. What Srinivas has done with Niti Aayog in India, but we want to do similar kind of a thing for solar energy as well going forward. So Srinivas is also the moderator for the next session for the panel discussion. So I would like to invite Srinivas to further invite panelists and start the interesting panel discussion. Over to you, Srinivas.
Thank you. Yeah. I After that presentation, I do have the honor of also talking to the panelists, and I hope to make it interesting. Um, I just want to sort of to the panelists, and I did warn you. I might deviate from the questions that is already given to you, but we'll make it interesting, right? So may I invite Ashish Chaturvedi, Head Action for Climate and Environment, UNDP. Ashish, good to have you. I think anyway. I think so. Unless Sabah wants me to sit somewhere else. And then we have Dr. Schaefer from the okay, Dr. Schaefer from the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. I always get confused between BMZ, BMWK, VK, and so on. So I hope I got it correct. Eh, Um, we have Ms. Davina Bilange from the African Development Bank. Good to have you, ma'am. We have Dr. Roca, Head of Solar PV Research, University of Havana, Cuba. Good to have you, ma'am. And we have Mr. Karma Shwarang from the Ministry of Energy, Natural Resources, Government of Bhutan. Good to have you. Um, can I start off before I get into the questions? Uh, Maybe we can start off with just one sentence comment from all of you on the Global Stocktake report. Any quick thoughts? You think it's covered all the issues? Are there issues that you think should be covered? Quick, 1 minute thought. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, so yeah, of course, the gaps are clear to see. And I won't, of course, talk only, if you look at the global stock take, it's not only about energy, it goes much beyond. But if we focus on the sort of energy numbers and, of course, the debate on fossil fuels, uh, I think there is still a gap in what is being sort of discussed right now and what needs to be done. The stock take was very clear in finding out what the gaps are. And of course, the expectations are that there needs to be sort of significant raising of ambitions. Now, how is that ambition raising distributed amongst sort of different country parties is, well, sort of for the negotiations to decide. But I think one thing is very clear, that there is a clear realization that we need significant raising of ambition by wherever possible. And also, I think as far as energy is concerned, uh, I, it's a no-brainer after looking at the presentations by KPMG and by you that solar is going to be a key sort of enabler for reaching the goals and sort of, well, whatever gaps we've identified under the stock take to really fill those gaps.
Thanks, Ashish.
Yeah, thank you very much. And first of all, I would like to thank you having the ability to be here and to discuss with you the importance of photovoltaic, solar energy, or renewables in general, meeting the climate goals. Um, the global stock take. Um, I think it would be better to talk about this next week. I still have the hope that we could maybe anchor three topics. The one topic is the tripling, one is the doubling of energy efficiency, one is the coal phase out, the phase out. So what?
You think all the brackets in the text will be removed?
Yeah, maybe. And the fossil fuel phase out as well. But I think let's make the story more positive. The problem now in the discussion and negotiation is the phase out of the fossil fuels, and there the problem that the negotiations gets more and more difficult. The positive of the story is the accelerated expanding of the renewables, and it's more than the tripling, it's more than doubling energy efficiency, it's more since yesterday, according to Route 66, the two-third share of renewable-based electricity production in 2030. This should be the goal, and this should be highlighted, and this should be maybe the goal we could come out of the COP28 next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just to echo also appreciation to be part of this discussion as the African Development Bank. But yeah, I like the let's look at the positive. So as the African continent, solar is one of those low-hanging fruits in the renewable angle. One, because for the most part, Africa's current energy source is largely biomass, and with the climate crisis, even the security crisis, we see nature being a target. So that is a resource that is at stake. Our hydros are drying out because of drought. So solar plays a big low-hanging fruit for us. And I'll speak more to that in the discussion. Thank you.
Well, I acknowledge that's probably we the five are going to do in the first 30 seconds of our interventions. Thank you very much, really, for the invitation. Um, I really like it very much. The report. I could like to mention for addressing your question in a more specific way that I was kind of missing the role of digitalization that I think it's going to be taking an important part in really being creating the conditions for a higher level of penetration. Um, the key role of flexibility of the grid and the role of storage. And I was also kind of missing the how the storage can be important for really achieving the goals that we are looking for. And since I'm coming from a developing country, the access to funding, I think that it's a barrier that it's actually one of the most important ones in several places.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, a very good morning to all of you here. And I must, at the outset, I must thank ISA for giving us this opportunity to Bhutan to come here and participate. And of course, I'm grateful for the very interesting presentations that were made yesterday, including today also that Vasuda Foundation as well as the earlier presentation was very insightful. And there's much that Bhutan can learn from the discussions and presentations that are made here. With respect to the global stocktake, I think it has been well opined by my panelists here. But nevertheless, of course, there are a lot of numbers in the presentations that have been made, and the report appears to be, packed with lots of data, etc. But I'm really wondering as to whether the report has really taken a stock of where, which are the countries that are really failing to, come out with the solar agenda, or there are countries who have not heard about the solar perhaps. And to other aspect, what I would like to say is, what is the challenges that are faced by those other countries that are besides USA, India, and those major countries? What are they feeling about? Do we have the equity financing for them? Forget the loans that we are talking about. I think for Bhutan's perspective, equity access to equity financing itself is a big challenge. So therefore, I mean, all these things, if put together, and where are these equities lying? There could be, as many funds have been talked about, the Green Climate Fund, the green bonds. Those are there, but are these available for those poorer countries? I think that is something that we need to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now get into the, the regular round of the questions after having done this one rapid round. Ashi, we'll start off with you. I'm sure all of us, including me, are very interested in knowing the kind of impacts that your initiative, the Climate Promise, has had, particularly on countries in achieving their NDCs. Can you sort of throw some light on the kind of impacts that you've seen, the kind of changes that you've seen since rolling out this project?
Thanks. So, Climate Promise is sort of a big part of the engagement with the NDC partnership, which UNDP runs in more than 100 countries around the world. And the recent numbers suggest that more than 85% of the developing countries are already working with UNDP under the Climate Promise project. And Climate Promise covers the entire gamut of the NDC priorities. So from energy to adaptation to looking at sort of how can countries work on specific sectors down to the sort of well, the subnational and of course local level as well. So there are various examples in terms of the sort of impacts on the ground. For instance, in India, Climate Promise is working in subnational entities like Jharkhand on the just transition initiative of the state of Jharkhand. Jharkhand is a coal dominant state in India, and the Climate Promise actually implements projects jointly with the state government in imagining what kind of futures exist in that coal dominant region. We are working on solarizing health facilities. This is a big program. There is work on solar mini grids in Africa. So there is an entire range of activities where we sort of try and link lived experiences with first policy change, but also a lot of colleagues are here. Sort of our Climate Promise team, the entire team is here, but also sort of governments which work very closely with Climate Promise, but not only sort of governments, but also non-state actors. So there are a lot of youth, young people, there are a lot of indigenous communities who have sort of as part of the Climate Promise, we've brought them here to engage in this entire sort of process and to actually get a diversity of voices, because I think there is a dominant voice on sort of, and you can look at the numbers in the report, 5 countries which are very different amongst themselves, right? So you have the US, you have Japan, you have India, you have China, and there's another one, Germany, was it? Fifth country where so I think there's massive diversity in these countries, and of course the drivers are very different. The access to finance is sort of very varying, and I think there are a lot of countries where it is required, where there's great amount of solar potential, but no investment is going there, and I think we should really focus on those sort of aspects.
Thank you, Ashish. I'll turn to you, Lutz, and with your permission, I would like to call you all by the first name. It's easier to. Yeah, Lutz, I know that BMZ is very active in multiple countries, and particularly in a lot of countries in Africa, if I'm not mistaken, right? So, from your work, could you sort of give us some perspective on how you are helping least developed economies, particularly a lot of these African groups, African countries, and of course, small island countries, some of the ones that come under the LDC, to overcome challenges related to infrastructure, regulatory frameworks, etc. Uh, Particularly for solar deployment, and I would say going beyond solar, also looking at renewable energy deployment.
So thank you. I think when I heard that question, it's clear that I know the question before. Of course, it's important to mention. But when I read that, I thought the topics, the LDCs and the non-LDCs got to deal with are similar. In Germany, we regarding the questions infrastructure, awareness, financing, and regulatory framework. The challenges are quite similar. The how okay, sorry, the how to deal with it's different, of course. And the first thing I think it's to do to develop an idea on how where to go to, what's the goal, and how to get there. So let's talk. Let's call it a energy transition plan or a climate action plan. That's the first step, I think, and that the step every country I think got to do. It's maybe located a level beneath the NDC, and then you got an idea how to develop your, for instance, energy system. What maybe could be the main energy carrier, solar energy, wind energy, or whatever. And the step beyond is the regulatory framework to need to meet the goal and to go the path for energy transition. And this, for instance, is a path where we support our partner countries. Where they maybe you ever heard of the program Get Transform. It's called Global Energy Transformation Program, which support partner governments on creating regulatory frameworks, adapting the framework on the needs of the energy transition. And the next step is a question how to finance it. And I think this is a discussion. I was involved in this at the COP28, I think 10 times. That's the general question, how to finance the energy transition. It is obvious it's not only a question of governments. It's a question of the private sector, how to mobilize the capital from private sector to finance photovoltaics, wind energy, and so on, and especially to phase out the financing of fossil fuels. And considering the financing aspect, we support with the global um, invest program, which brings together the investors and the banks to close the bankability gaps of upcoming projects to meet the climate goals. Finally, thank you.
Thank you, Lutz. Ravina, if I can come to you, I no, I do not know if it's still called that, but I know that the African Development Bank at some had a thing called a high fives, right? Where if I'm not mistaken, and um, eliminating energy poverty was one of the key, one of the major high fives, right? If I'm not mistaken. Now, I know that the African Development Bank has supported a number of countries along with the World Bank Group, and now more recently the International Solar Alliance partnership also to address sort of the energy access issues in Africa. My question specifically is that is there? I mean, how do you sort of in the NDCs? Are there any NDCs that countries have energy access and solar deployment sort of forms a key component of the NDC, and how is the AFDB sort of helping these countries to achieve both eliminating or energy poverty on one hand, and then also helping them address their achieve their NDC targets on the other.
Right. Thank you so much. So just to give context, uh, Africa has 650 million people without energy access. So that's basically what we have. We have our energy access still based on biomass, and largely at COP21, the African leaders came with a plan. They put on a plan, what is called the Africa Renewable Energy Initiative, that showed the potential of this continent in terms of renewable, vast renewable potential. In fact, it has a 10 terawatt solar potential. And with that, what the African Development Bank has said, when we talk about the high fives, one of them is energy access. And just even before COP, we had Morocco with its Wazazat, Nur Wazazat, the first concentrated solar panel program in the world. At the back of it, we've now introduced what we call Desert to Power.
Yeah.
Another initiative to create solar. Our president keeps saying that there's the Great Green Wall. I don't know whether you've heard about that, to plant trees across the Sahara. And he says the Desert to Power is to enable communities, because much as it has that vast potential, let me just get the statistics. It has, it's to create 10 gigawatts across that belt of the Sahara Desert. 11 countries. That same Sahara region, the Sahelian region, has the highest conflict population, highest poverty, highest immigration into Europe. And so the potential was to create that, to actually even stop the deforestation of the Great Green Wall. And so that 10 gigawatt Desert to Power program has begun. We have Chad with its solar energy, Gambia with its solar, introducing, I think, 48 megawatts of utility potential. So these are all projects coming on board, but the issues around financing, around structuring of deals, those are some things that need to really come out as we talk of tripling the tripling of renewables and solar. And so it's very important that as countries redesign them, these become articulated very well. In fact, to date, 45 of the 53 countries that have submitted NDCs, include hosted, quantified renewable energy potentials. So there is recognition that it is. In fact, when you travel around Africa, I see this boy and I can identify with him with one lamp. You see little solar panels on every rural home, this size. It's not that these people came to cope, but the market is telling them something. And I think we need to give value to what is in the market and facilitate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Roka, if I can turn to you. Now, I would like to ask you two sort of related questions. One is how can, since you are part of the University of Havana. So one more on the role of educational institutions in supporting governments and scaling up renewables. And the second, which I thought would be also related, is any suggestions on the kind of technologies or cutting edge technologies that you think uh, you could work with government, particularly on solar and renewables, work with governments, which would you recommend, and how do you think one should go about operationalizing that? I mean, doing something at the lab level is different, but then how do you get it, at the scale? How do you scale them up? So that would be important.
Thank you. Very interesting questions. I will try to summarize. Yes, I'm coming from a university, so I think it's not a very common species, in my opinion, but because I have not seen too many scientists in general or researchers. Um, but I have to say that the role of universities could be even higher than just creating knowledge and give information for the specialized workers in the energy transition. Um, this, by sure, it's one of the traditional works that university have been doing. Okay, so our engineers, our specialists get formed in the universities with study plans and so on that are actually too vertical. So when someone enters into an engineer career, and myself, I'm a physicist, you learn physics and you learn mechanical engineering and you learn I don't know, automation, but nobody explained you during the career what a business model is, and you never get in contact with someone in a bank or in a policy maker office. I mean, that part of the formation in the university is isolated with other capabilities that you need actually to be able to transfer properly whatever you are doing at the lab scale into society. So this is a huge challenge. How we can also transform universities with different initiatives to be able to get that enormous potential of very talented people creating knowledge from the fundamental to the innovation, and to do this socially productive. And this is really important, how to connect people. So there are certain initiatives in Cuba. We have created a group of national universities, and this group for renewable energies and energy efficiency, and this group was connected even from the beginning of the policy of energy transition, working with different sectors and transferring this idea that we need more capabilities in the universities to address these issues.
Thank you very much. Mr. Karma, Bhutan is already carbon negative as of date. Right? So, I mean, perhaps one of the three countries which is carbon negative, and Bhutan is one, and also very high on the happiness index. So now going beyond happiness and going beyond, is there any plans to? I know you're doing very well on the hydro front, and you're also giving us a lot of your hydroelectricity. But going beyond the hydro, are you also looking at uh, including solar into your energy mix or electricity mix? And the other question, which is also sort of related or linked to it, is that is Bhutan also looking at hydro solar kind of a hybrid? Are you looking at floating solar because of the a lot of water bodies there? So what are your plans? I'm sure people are interested to know more on how Bhutan wants to go beyond hydro, if there are such plans.
Can you keep it there? It's working. So it shows that I should not be speaking. Uh, Thank you very much. And you are very right. For those of you who are here today, I must share here that Bhutan is carbon negative, and we have a Bhutan pavilion just in the adjacent blocks, and block number 71, where Bhutan showcases its commitment to stay carbon neutral for the entire life or into the entire future. And as of today, Bhutan's that's primarily because of our, the transformative leadership that we have, and of course the guiding philosophy of cross-national happiness that we have adopted, where environmental preservation, the cultural preservation, the sustainable development, as well as good governance, are the pillars of our, future on which the growth philosophy is all based. So based on this. We also have the fundamental duties of our respective citizens to uphold the environmental protection as a key fundamental duty that has been given to us. So, given this situation, we have embarked on a growth path that encompasses not the usage of carbon intensive products, but of more of hydro, as you rightly said. So, therefore, given this context, I must share here that we do have lots of plans in the offing in terms of how we would like to venture into and diversify our energy resources, and of course the energy security aspect that is there, and given these two dimensions, give and of course given the impacts of climate change on the various river flow regimes in the Himalayas. I'm sure all of us, you must have heard about the GLOF in the Himalayas, the dwindling river discharges, the the patterns of rainfall that has been changing over the years. Then we have the climate impacts, and so on and so forth. So given this kind of situation, we definitely want to venture into the solar as well. And solar, for that matter, we've not only put into our NDCs the nationally determined contributions, but we also have a flexible policies in hand, and we want to ensure that these policies are in in sync with the developments across all the evolvements of the environment that we live in. For instance, India is a going very huge on solar. So is the world, and just from the recent reports that I have read from the renewable energy world shows that there is a growth of about 14% in solar globally, and solar has led the path of new generation technology. So from that point, Bhutan should not be left behind. So we must also jump the bandwagon and see that we are also part of this global initiative to raise the mission of achieving the global climate goals that we have agreed in 2015. So therefore we definitely have lots of plans in terms of the solar. The 500 megawatt we are going to achieve by 2026, and today the capacity is about 1.5 megawatt. So that's something that the initiative we are taking, and by 2030 we definitely want to further double it to 500 1000 megawatts. So that is how the Bhutanese energy landscape would be getting transformed, and much so because we also would like to venture into the floating solar aspects, because we have a lot of hydropower dams there. Of course, the assessment has to be done, but nevertheless, we also would like to see that those open flat areas created in the reservoirs are productively used for perhaps the co-located generation. So that is what we are also planning at. Besides, we are also looking into some pump storage projects where solar and hydro combination would provide a much grid security. And as you said, we are exporting 70% of our green electricity to India. And from the calculations that I did, given the grid emission factor in India, it is tons power last year perhaps would have displaced about 6 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So that itself is an achievement that you know uh, we are having in this country. So therefore Bhutan definitely would like to be in the limelight, and would see that we contribute in whatever small ways that is possible. Of course, small is beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. From point eight, thanks to our solar, and with this, I think it's come down to point seven, something like that. Yeah, and it's uh, likely to come to point six, the grid emission factor. But yeah, uh, I'll come to the second round now, and turn to you, Ashish. Um, I know you've been working with a number of countries, and and you talk of your climate promise. But one question, and we've heard it in the morning also, and my feeling or all our perception is access to data and tracking data is super difficult, particularly in some countries, right? Now, you also supporting a lot of countries, I presume, on meeting their solar targets and so on as part of the NDC, right? So, what are the kind of mechanisms do you think countries have in monitoring and reporting their progress in solar energy from your experience of partnership with these countries?
Yeah, so I think every country is, and we are sitting here at a COP, so every country is supposed to submit its national communication to the UNFCCC, the biennial update reports, and now by December 2024, every country would have to submit the biennial transparency report. So that is a mechanism at the national level, which every country has to comply with, and that, of course, that is a submission to the to the UNFCCC. Therefore, systems need to be put in place in order to make the data flow. So you've given one example from India. Uh, a lot of countries about uh, are currently working on their biennial update reports and the national communications. But there is a clear deadline for all countries to submit their biennial transparency reports by 2024. So therefore, I think one of the clear mechanisms at a global level, which I think ISA can leverage on, is to see how all of the global solar stock take that is intended or you want to focus on, what is the available data from the biennial transparency reports. Uh, I don't think every country is going to clearly mention what solar capacity is already added in the biennial transparency report. Of course, the common reporting tables and the templates which have been agreed upon kind of do talk about some kind of disaggregation, but not necessarily to the granularity that you might need for a global solar stocktake. But I think that is a starting point. That is definitely a starting point to kind of start thinking about and that is as sort of well reliable data as you can get, because it is vetted by national governments and it will be reviewed internationally, because the biennial transparency reports will now go through a rigorous assessment by domestic experts and also international experts. Now, what underpins that is great amount of institutional capacity at the national level. And I think this is where universities come into picture. We just organized a meeting in India on India's biennial transparency report, and a large part of the room was academics, people who work in universities, people who work with data, people who work with science, and of course, civil society actors on think tanks like where Srinivas is currently working, who are working with data already. So I think it's important to really look at that ecosystem when you start thinking about the stock take. How do we strengthen capacities? What kind of capacities are required? The skills of amongst individual researchers and also think tanks, but also institutional capacities. What kind of data the centers are servers are required, the software which is required to deal with this. I think most countries can actually learn from each other. So there are programs where the Koreans work very closely with a lot of countries through KOICA and others. The Germans through the GIZ and other agencies work with a lot of countries. UNDP is also supporting a lot of countries through the CHEF funding, which is allowing to strengthen capacities at the local level. And now, recently, there is a JEF call to start thinking about policy coherence across different, and it's going to be in only 5 or 6 countries which have the highest star allocations. But I think these are we should really start thinking about subnational capacities for that solar stock take as well, because it might be that the data which flows into the biennial transparency report might be contingent on what capacities exist for the data to be reported in the first place. And therefore, you might actually just look at aggregate numbers and not a breakdown. And it's not because the countries don't want to report, it's just because they don't have the structures and the institutions to help them do it.
Thanks so much, Ashish. That was really comprehensive. Dr. Lutz, a question to you again from your work in multiple countries, and I would break it into 2 parts. One is, can you sort of share a couple of success stories, on solar installations across countries that you think is because of the kind of work that BMZ has been supporting? That's number one. And number two, now countries have not been at the same level of solar, the kind of solar penetration, right? And both in terms of solar penetration as well as in terms of cost. For example, India has come down from the cost has come down from 18 rupees in 2010 to about 2 rupees now. Now, is there some sort of, I mean, does BMZ have, is there a work program that you have with some countries where that kind of solar penetration has not been as much as in other countries, or the cost is still very high, and sort of bringing the innovations and bringing in the technological transformations to both bring down the costs as well as improve efficiencies?
Well, thank you. It's a quite interesting question indeed. We I would like to mention two programs we are up to roll out. One program is the Energy Device Development Program, NDEF, Energy Device Development. It's a more decentralized program which focus on decentralized photovoltaics, cooking applications, and so on, and brings the photovoltaic on the ground. The other program, the program I do prefer dealing with, the Get Transform and Get Invest and Get Pro program I mentioned before, which has several pillars. One pillar is the Get Transform pillar, which, as I mentioned, support partner governments to establish reforms on the regulatory framework. And the other one is the Get Invest program, which um, closes the bankability gap and to support on one hand big renewable based project and small projects as well. And uh, no, I think it's better the acoustic. Um, and the NF program in the last years. Let me check the number. Nearly 90,000 small, medium entities were supported to get a better access to energy, and the goal is to meet another 25,000 entities within the next 2 years to get them better access to energy as well. Within the Get Invest program, I think the amount of financing was about 1.8 billion euros within the last years, and the program will still go on the next 3 years. And we hope it's a multi-donor program of the EU and several member states of the EU that we can bring it forward after the year 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. Um, Ravina, can you sort of give us a sense of the kind of financing that was already going into African countries for NDC, the kind of, and also look at in the next 5 years, 10 years, where do you see, where do you see the kind of trend of increase in or scale up of finance? And where do you think the money could come from going beyond what the banks have, going beyond the multilateral development banks? So what if you were to sort of put a figure to it? I'm sure the bank has done a lot of calculation on what it would take to help countries to achieve their NDCs, and particularly looking up from a renewable energy angle.
Uh, so in terms of costing NDCs, the needs to 2030 is a $2.8 trillion need. And I think that translates to about 234.5 billion per year. And the report showed that about 30% of global climate finance, 3%, sorry, is what goes to Africa. So we can do the math there. And currently, as the African Development Bank, our climate finance sits about 3.7 billion per year. like the large of it maybe goes to agriculture and energy, but really down to what is needed. We have since top, we have a dedicated renewable energy department within the bank. That's how serious we take this agenda, because it sits at the whole essence of driving poverty reduction and the whole SDGs and climate and everything we call development. And so are the within that department, we have dedicated programs. We have the Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa that does a whole chain of facilitation, whether it is at the market level intervention upstream in terms of capacity, investments in terms of grants and equity. We work with Power Africa of the US in terms of penetration. We work with AC for All. And so there's a whole range of trying to deal with a problem at its need. So where we have the Renewable Fund for Africa, some of them are related to local currency issues and or even equity facilitations. But that, I think the biggest challenge is how to revolutionize the market. Africa has the highest risk, and the issue is really about risk perception. And most of it is perceived risk. And so we have at the bank tried to deal with that by putting out what we call Africa investment forums to really put the faces behind those investments in terms of developers and the investors, so that there is that physical feel of what is it in that deal, and even bring in the financial sector. So we have what we call the Africa Financial Alliance on Climate Change to break that barrier of how do you perceive risk in this market. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Roca, quick question. Now, I'm not sure whether in how many countries this practice is being followed, but in your opinion, should academia also be involved in when countries formulate their NDC? Have you been part of that? What's your view on this proposal?
Yes. Well, actually, in Cuba, we are involved. We were involved from the beginning, from 2012, when the country was discussing for the first time the targets to achieve, and certain working groups were created by technologies in the first time, in the first period. And one lesson that we learned in that process is, and that we introduce it, this lesson, the achievement of this lesson in the last period, is that it's better to work all together with the different visions of the different technologies, not the PV people and the wind people and the hydro people in groups isolated, but all together in multidisciplinary teams with the policymakers, the companies, and the academy all together, and even taking into account the political governance at the local level. So this is what we did in the last period. So I think the answer is yes, we should be involved. To start, because in general, academy, it's a certain of validation sector. So every time you include academy into discussion, you have like a major certainty somehow about the scientific background of whatever is being discussed. And this is good. And also because in a certain way, we need to understand that it's important to get closer the universities and the academy into the society. So this immense palace of creating knowledge should be closer and closer of real streets and real farms and real people. I mean, it's not that academic people is not real, but the environmental framework of work. It's separated from the real applications land in which you need, I mean, to convince people about using that. But to the scientist, you don't need to convince the scientist. He is already into it. So I think closing this gap was important. In Cuba, it was really a very good experience. From the very beginning, we were involved, and I really advise other countries to do it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Karma, quick question on are there any policy adjustments that you had to do in Bhutan to bring in integrate solar into your climate action and energy policy? And
Yeah,
what are
thank
they?
you. Thank you. I think that definitely this has been the way how Bhutan is going on. And we do have policies in place. And now, because of the changing environment moving forward, we have these NDCs as well as the challenges presented by the energy security as well as the demand requirements of the nation. So based on that, our policies are getting evolved, and getting reviewed and redesigned to face the challenges that Bhutan have to move forward. And therefore, the solar has become a key ingredient of how we want to, shape the future of energy landscape in our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would now like to open the floor for one or two quick questions. Sabha, I think we have a couple of minutes. Anyone? Otherwise, I will again ask a question. So if you don't want to hear my voice, you should ask a question. Well, that's a different. Sabha, you had a question, you said?
I just wanted to know more about I just want to know a little bit more about the desert to power program. I mean, it sounds very interesting.
It's a
10
very interesting
gigawatt
program.
in the Sahel region. If you can talk a little bit more about that, because it's something very new to me at least.
And if you can also, since he's talking of that, I also find that small island programs also very interesting. The one that you're doing for just the island states. I'm not sure if I got that right. There's some name to it, but anyway, the desert to power is definitely interesting.
Okay, on the desert to power, as I said, we already had the Morocco Wazazat program. That is, I think, still is, not sure, the biggest world solar park, concentrated solar park. And on that same belt of the Sahara, just down below, you have Gambia, the whole chain of countries, there are 11 countries all the way to Djibouti. Very high solar radiation, very high poverty numbers. All of it is high poverty, high deforestation, high everything in that belt. Initially, and there still is a plan to plant trees across that belt. It's called the Great Green Wall Initiative. And as they plant those trees, because again, our energy need is serviced by deforestation, by cook stoves through biomass. And so the plan was to now protect that belt and even protect the people, nation people in that belt by creating a solar park of about 20 the desert to power 3 terawatts of that potential. But the whole Africa potential in terms of solar is a 10 gigawatt potential, 10 terawatt potential. So that one aims to generate 3 terawatts of that potential and service about 250 million people. Ideally, these are investments that are coming through the bank. So far, the different countries come up with programs. This is supported by what is called the G5 Sahel countries. That was their request, and so the bank got involved. And so each country individually puts in a request to the bank to fund. I mentioned Chad with its energy potential. Some of it is for the grid. We didn't talk about the grid here, which is very instrumental as we scale up the tripling of solar potentials. And so some of that goes to the grid, some of it goes to utility transformations. So yeah, basically that's what it is. But we have it on our website, and I would be happy to link you up with the team that work on it. Thank you.
I don't want to summarize this discussion, but I thought I'll take this opportunity to ask one question, one final question to all of you, and the same question applies. Now, there's a lot of talk of tripling of RE by 2030, and the target is about 11,000 gigawatts. It seems that bulk of it should come from solar, the major kid on the block. So, and if you're looking at solar, and let's say bulk of the 11,000 gigawatts should come from solar, then you're looking at a huge land footprint. If you're looking at only utility scale solar, right? Now, if you want that kind of numbers, the kind of volume, the kind of quantum, then you can't just look at rooftop solar or DRE. It has to be a healthy mix of everything, which means that you need that kind of land, right? And that land is at a premium. And there's also this very interesting idea that's been floating for some time, the one sun, one world, one grid. Maybe that could be a solution to address some of this if you can have an integrated grid. If there was one thing that you would do, or you would tell your president, prime minister, or energy minister, whatever, that needs to be done to get this operationalized or get something starting on this, what would that one thing be? If you want to say two things, you can say two things. If Sabha allows that time for it.
Okay, so well, if I have to talk to my prime minister, I don't think I need to do any convincing. But yeah, so I think so two things. I think we need, if we want to go sort of we will have to go beyond utility scale solar. We will have to look at alternative models, and for that, I think uh, it's kind of obvious, but I think we need a combination of two things. One, we need business models, and for business models, you need the kind of sort of well means of implementation, as they call it here. You need finance, you need technology, and you need capacity. So if you don't have the right business models, it's not going to work out for agri PV, for solar water pumps, all kinds of innovative storage. This floating solar, all of this, right? So I think we need that, and the countries which have been successful have actually managed to pull this off. All the five countries that are listed there, of course, there are challenges there. The other part, which is, of course, related to this, is about how do we bring down costs. So, and there, I think we need to really start thinking in terms of aggregation of demand, which some countries have demonstrated that allows you to bring down costs dramatically. And I think this is something that we need to do in geographies which are not very well served right now. And how can intermediaries like MDBs and others, and of course ISA as well, aggregate that demand to bring down the costs in those geographies as well.
Thank you. As my minister prefers short answers, I would tell him, suggest, um, keep an eye on the combination of different technologies to solve the problem. PV is an important one, of course, but in Germany we do have wind onshore, we do have wind offshore, we do have slightly water power, biomass just a little bit, but the mixture of wind and solar, that's the solution maybe for us. And the other question got to be considered is, don't forget the biodiversity impacts of renewable energies as well. This got to be kept in mind, and especially when you discuss about water power, when you discuss about biomass and power to electricity, and what you mentioned, photovoltaics, and the impact on land use. We got a big discussion in Germany on wind turbine installations and the social acceptance of it. So I think there are several pillars on the discussion, and everything we got to try to deal with anyhow, and the mixture of the technologies could be the best solution. Thank you.
I think for us it would be speed and scale. And ideally, what we're looking at is regional power pools. Uh, to break the coast. And there we have the West African purple, East African purples, the Southern Africa is already mature. So that is where we want to drive the shift. Thank you very much.
Um, yes. So for us, the first thing would be to access to funding. That's the major barrier. Then I would say distributing knowledge is important. It's a lot of information and knowledge that is needed from several actors to really be able to implement from developing a proper business model from that into the technological aspects and the social dimension. So I would say it also, this distributed system will need also distributed knowledge. You cannot anymore to conceive the centralization of whatever you are doing. And for that, people taking the decisions they have to be informed and they have to be aware about what they have to do.
Thank you. I think, to my mind, what comes is in order to achieve this 11,000 megawatt by 2030, I think we must up our ante in terms of collaboration and innovation. Innovation in all aspects of the ecosystem of solar's ambition to reach 2030. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much all for it was really good speaking to all to Sabah before he evicts.
Thank you. I mean, very interesting. At least now I have a very clear path to follow. Okay, because we started writing this report and we realized that it's a very complex work. It's not that easy as we had thought of. And through this discussion, at least I have a very clear path to follow for the next report because we are going to do this every year. We want to institutionalize that. And as Ashish said, I mean, at least I have an idea of now connecting to also universities or technical institutions who are part of the national communication process to work with them to work on the granular data of renewable energy. Yeah, that's very important for us now because I mean we have been collecting data from various sources, but I think the most authentic source is to get the data from the ground, and the universities are very important for that. No, thanks to you. I mean, you highlighted many points. Of course, you talked about financing, you talked about regulatory framework, you talked about the major programs which the banks are doing. So all of that is going to feed into the next report that we have. We want to take this opportunity to launch the report, our report, the Global Stocktake report that we have written this time. This was done in last 4 5 months, I would say, but it requires really a lot of time to do it next time. This will be available on the ISA website today, so you can go through it. You can provide your comments as well. Thank you so much to all of you for for being here and for having a very interesting panel discussion. I have a small token to honor your presence. So, thank you so much. Thank you. This is we have very segregated decades. Which you have done. Okay, that way you have to make it. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much. I'm not.